This is Jennifer's story. Confidential submission 437, New South Wales evidence to the National Inquiry into the separation of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children from their families. Early one morning in November 1952, the manager from Burnt Bridge Mission came to our home with a policeman. I could hear him saying to Mum, "I am taking the two girls and placing them in Cootamundra home." My father was saying, "What right have you?" The manager said he can do what he likes. They said my father had a bad character. I presume he said this as my father associated with Aboriginal people. They would not let us kiss our father goodbye. I will never forget the sad look on his face. He was unwell, and he worked very hard all his life as a timber cutter. That was the last time I saw my father. He died within 2 years. We were taken to the manager's house at Burnt Bridge, and next morning we were in court. I remember the judge saying, "These girls don't look neglected to me." The manager was saying all sorts of things. He wanted us placed in Cootamundra home. So we were sent away, not knowing that it would take 5 years before we came back to Kempsey again. Mum used to write to us every week. Sometimes it would take 2 months before we received the letters, and of course they were opened and read first. Sometimes parts would be torn out of the letters by the matron or whoever was in charge. Cootamundra was so different from the North Coast. It was cold and dry. I missed the tall timbers, and all the time I was away, there was this loneliness inside me. I had often thought of running away, but Kate was there, and I was told to always look after her. I had just turned 11, and Kate was still only 7. I often think now of Cootamundra as a sad place. I think of thousands of girls who went through that home, some girls that knew what family love was and some who never knew. They were taken away as babies. Jennifer was later sent to live with a white woman who treated her cruelly. So much so she was returned to Cootamundra after complaints made by others to the Protection Board. Her story continues. In December 1957, our mother finally got us home. She was the first Aboriginal to move into a commission house. My mother died 4 years later. She suffered high blood pressure. She was 54 years old. It was fight all the way to survive because she was born an Aboriginal. I still can't see why we were taken from our home. We were not neglected. We wore nice clothes. We were not starving. Our father worked hard and provided for us, and we came from a very close and loving family. I feel our childhood has been taken away from us, and it has left a big hole in our lives.
Hear the voice of Eva Johnson, forcibly removed from her mother as a child and taken to Croker Island. A letter to my mother. I not see you long time now. I not see you long time now. Why'd Fullabin take me from you? I don't know why. Give me to missionary to be God's child. Give me new language. Give me new name. All time I cry. They say, that's shame. I go to city down south, real cold. I forget all them stories my mother you told. Gone is my spirit, my dreaming, my name. Gone to these people, our country to claim. Then gave me white mother. She give me a new name. All time I cry. That she say, that shame. I not see you long time now. I not see you long time now. I grow as woman, not pickaninny no more. I need you to teach me your wisdom, your law. I am your spirit. I'll stay alive, but in whiteful away. You won't survive. I'll fight for your land, for your sacred sites, to sing and to dance with the brolga in flight, to continue to live in your own tradition. A culture for me was replaced by a mission. I not see you long time now. I not see you long time now. One day, your dancing, your dreaming, your song will take me, your spirit, back where I belong. My mother, the earth, the land. I demand protection from aliens who rule, who command, for they do not know where our dreaming began. Our destiny lies in the laws of white man. 2 women we stand, our glory untold, but now, as our spiritual bondage unfold, we will silence this burden, this longing, this pain, when I hear you, my mother, give me my name. I not see you long time now. I not see you long time now.
As we light the sorry candle, we observe silence as we remember the stolen generations, remembering those who died without being reunited with family, and those who did not live to hear the apology from the Prime Minister in 2008.
I had heard of Aboriginal children being taken from their families, of the stolen generation. I had never personally met anyone for whom this was part of their family history. And I certainly didn't ever expect I would sit inside the home, the Cootamundra domestic training home for Aboriginal girls, hearing a young Wiradjuri man speak along with his grandfather, telling the stories of these girls and their families. It is a hard story with ongoing ramifications, and there is no soft way to tell it. More commonly known as Cootamundra Girls' Home, this home was operated by the New South Wales Aborigines Welfare Board from 1911 to 1968. Under the Aborigines Protection Act of 1909, approximately 1,200 Aboriginal girls under the age of 14 were removed from their families and placed in Cootamundra between 1912 and 1975. Girls were taken from the mission stations, as we heard in Jennifer's story, and some were taken because they were considered too expensive to keep. The supposed aim of government policy was to segregate part Aboriginal children from their families in order to assimilate them into mainstream community. The girls were not allowed to remain in contact with their families, and many would go and sit quietly on the cap of the well that you see, gazing longingly down the driveway in hope of seeing a visitor who would take them home. They didn't know why they were there, and many didn't know where they were from. This was a legacy that some would never recover from. The girls faced segregation at school. Going to the bathroom and going swimming could only happen once the white mainstream kids had finished. It was hammered into these young girls to fear Aboriginal men. Relationships or becoming pregnant was the last thing the welfare board wanted. The motto of the home: think white, act white, be white. The girls were later sent to work as domestic servants in the homes and farms of middle-class white people. And the irony is not lost that once in domestic service, a number of the young girls became pregnant, only to have their children in turn removed and institutionalised. Some girls from the home around age 16, 17 were put on a train to Sydney Central train station with no physical or monetary resources. There was no one to meet them at the other end. They had no idea of where they were, of where to go, of how to live and survive, let alone to know who to trust or ask for help. In 2004, some of the girls, now women, joined in a reunion titled Journey to Reclaim Our Childhood. Some couldn't bear the pain of returning to Cootamundra. Some had pieced together more of their history. Others bore the obvious scars of ongoing grief and trauma. And while the word was that the youngest girls were 11, it was discovered that there was a nursery, that babies and toddlers had been taken from their parents. I stood in that nursery with heavy heart, knowing that pity and helplessness was of no use, that these stories need to be told. Since Cootamundra Girls' Home closed, the 35-acre property has been passed on to the young local Aboriginal Land Council, who in turn has leased the property on a long-term lease to the Aboriginal Evangelical Fellowship as a Christian vocational, cultural and agricultural centre. It is now called Bimbadeen College and is listed as a historical heritage site by the New South Wales State Government.
Every day we listen to stories about Indigenous communities, colleagues and groups, stories of struggle, resistance and recognition, stories told frankly but without rancour or bitterness. In Narrandera, it was the story of one Indigenous man's persistence to right a wrong done to his father and his grandfather. Both men had enlisted and gone to war, his dad in World War II and his granddad in the First World War, almost 100 years before. We had set off early from West Wyalong to be in Narrandera for morning tea. Our coach pulled up by a large sunny park opposite the Uniting Church. People were pleased to stretch legs, warm up in the sun, enjoy a picnic cuppa or go find a brewed coffee in the town. We'd already been told something of the story of Michael Lyons and the war memorial plaques in the nearby church, so for me it was a bit tempting to linger outside. But our tour guide encouraged us to go in. Having heard it, I realised that his story quietly brings together Indigenous and colonial history, Dreamtime and Christian beliefs, and it speaks of one man's hard-won efforts to obtain justice. So this is my tribute to Michael. I've called it Lest We Forget, 1918 to 2018. It won't take long. Come on, step inside the old church doors, the porch with plaques and portraits of war. Choose a pew and listen to a tall Wiradjuri man talk about his paintings on the sanctuary wall, stories of his land and law in aqua, ochre dots and hands, totems linked in timeless span. He's pointing out 2 wooden boards inscribed with names of soldiers gone to war, golden sons of this country town, farewell together, white and brown. White names only, on both honour rolls. A blight he's fought to have put right, to claim for them an equal place and reinstate the Lion's name despite the prejudice and fears. Notice now the Lion's name newly placed, gilding the base of each narrow frame. Belated recognition, honouring the dad and granddad he reveres. Lest we forget, he's picking up his painted Mulga didgeridoo, singing up his story too, a hymn to his kin that brings forth tears. It only took 100 years.
Our walking on country journey began and ended in Wagga Wagga. Over a week there had been sadness and shame. We'd heard the stories that Claire spoke of the children at Cootamundra Girls' Home and the 100 years of waiting for recognition at Narrandera. We had worshipped with the Aboriginal communities in Condobolin and Murrin Bridge and touched the ancient past at Mungo National Park. We heard the stories of resistance at the Comarunga Reserve, where Jack Patton encouraged Yorta Yorta families to walk off the government reserve to live as free people on the flats at Marupna. Our time in Wagga Wagga at the end further rekindled hope, especially in the story of the recovery of the Wiradjuri language through a partnership of Wiradjuri elders and Charles Sturt University, a partnership that led to the Wiradjuri Language and Cultural Heritage Project. The language was almost totally lost during the 20th century. Through the work of recovery from fragments remembered by the elders and by pioneering work done by Dr. Stan Grant Sr., it has now been captured in a new Wiradjuri dictionary. The language is taught at the university in a graduate certificate program and in many high schools. We learned about the recovery at the Yelbalingagada Centre, a small rural property near Wagga Wagga, where Flo Grant and other Aboriginal elders teach young Wiradjuri people living skills and the Wiradjuri language and heritage. Hearing the language spoken there, as we did at the Cootamundra Girls' Home, was deeply moving. Cootamundra was established to suppress the language and to annihilate traditional ways of life. Yet in that place we heard it spoken fluently by a young Wiradjuri man in the presence of his proud grandfather. That the language has been reborn with the support of Anglo-Australian academics like Professor Ross Chambers, who joined us there in Wagga Wagga. We've been told to say it's Wagga Wagga, at Charles Sturt. This is a sign of hope and a foretaste of reconciliation. We found out that it's Wagga Wagga because it's about crows and it's the plural of crow, so it just makes sense to say both. In concluding our walking on country, we're going to watch a short 15-minute film that is the fruit of the recovery of the Wiradjuri language, and it demonstrates beautifully the way that the language is the bearer of spirituality. It is an extended prayer poem about the way of life, which is Yindi Amara. Yindi Amara is often translated as respect, but it has multiple meanings: to give honour to go slow, to take responsibility. Yindi Mara Yambawan, respecting everything. On this Reconciliation Sunday, we grieve the past, and we also honour the gifts of Aboriginal culture and wisdom and spirituality that are shared with all of us with generosity that we do not deserve, but which is given to us with grace that we may treasure it too.